Item 3, Title 6 Policy and Meeting Procedures. CYMPO complies with Title 6 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and related non-discrimination statutes and regulations in all programs and activities. Member of the public may review the CYMPO Title 6 plan and submit a self-identification survey by accessing the CYMPO website. A reminder to those attending the meeting, please keep your line on mute until you wish to speak. This meeting is available for public viewing on the CYMPO YouTube page. Item 4, call to the public. This item is to provide an opportunity for presentation of comments by the public on subjects not on the agenda. Individuals wishing to address the board need not request permission in advance and are limited to 3 minutes. Clerk, did we have anyone that expressed any interest in call to the public?
We do not at this time.
All right. Well, at this time, call to the public will be over. Move on to item 5, consideration and possible action to approve the August 18th, 2021 Executive Board regular meeting minutes. Mr. Gallegos.
Yes, you have the minutes for your review. If you have any questions, let us know.
I don't. So moved.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All opposed? No. Clerk, will you please show Secretary Treasurer Good present?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I missed the second on the motion for the minutes.
I had a second on that. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Or John, either one.
Thank you.
We'll go right on to item 6, CYMPO Executive Director Report. Mr. Gallegos, back to you.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, just 2 notes to pass on to you. At your next executive board meeting, you will be presented with next year's schedule. Between now and then, if you could let us know, I know we have several new board members, and we've been doing the 3rd Wednesday of the month at 3 p.m. Email Allison and or myself and let us know if this is a conflict for any other reason. And if it is, we can send out a doodle poll and offer some alternative meeting times. So let us know on that. The other note that I wanted to pass on is at the request of Mayor-elect Good, I am going to be meeting with the City of Prescott staff this Friday and discussing what a community meeting might look like regarding Sundog Connector project. So I'll be meeting with the city manager, a public works director, and communication director. So we'll keep you updated on that and posted on that and see if we have a community meeting at some point in the next month or so. With that said, I don't have anything else. If there's any questions or comments, happy to take them. Cal, you're muted, sorry.
My bad. If there's nothing else for Mr. Gallegos, we'll move on to item 7, Mobility Management Transit Update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. We have a transit planner position that is closing today. So hopefully in the next week, we'll be interviewing for that and bring someone on board in the next couple weeks. And then I got a note from the town of Prescott Valley that they are moving forward. They've engaged us and asked for our review on some upcoming RFPs related to their micro transit system and related software. So the town is moving forward. I just want to let everyone know we're CYMPO is being actively communicated with, engaged, and offering our support where we can. So with that said, happy to take any questions or comments.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask Vinny, can you go back to the mobility management manager? What are you talking about here?
So the transit, we have a transit planner position that I talked about at the retreat. And this ties into the NACOG agreement that's on the next item. So NACOG has a transit planner position that they've had on behalf of CYMPO. We've ended that agreement, and we're going to bring that position back under the roof of CYMPO. So it's a transit planner position. It's the planner that was formerly Pedro Rodriguez, who left NACOG to go work for the town of Prescott Valley. And they had the position that was a joint NACOG-CYMPO position. So it's coming back to CYMPO where it was, I guess, originally many years ago.
And this position is paid for by NACOG, correct?
This position is paid for by 2 funding sources. We have a transit planning that we receive on an annual basis. It's called 5305D, D as in David. And then we also have a grant that's a 5310 mobility management grant. NACOG applied for that grant on CYMPO's behalf and was awarded it. So for the remainder of the grant, Supervisor Brown, we will be billing against it, and then we will apply for the grant when it expires a year from now.
So it'll be passed through.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, moving on to item 8, review, discussion, and possible action to approve the new service planning intergovernmental agreement with Northern Arizona Council of Governments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So this is what I was just referencing. We had an agreement where NACOG was hosting a position on behalf of NACOG and CYMPO. Long story short, I've reviewed it. It's taken place the last 2 years. In light of the transit funding that this region has and will have in the near future, it's my decision to go ahead and end that current agreement, essentially reverse the agreement, so that CYMPO will then host its own position and NACOG won't do it on our behalf, and we'll have a transit planner position. It's something that we actually had many years ago. This agreement has been reviewed by staff, both the director of NACOG, myself, we're in agreement with it. The TAC on both NACOG and CYMPO has reviewed it and supports it. I will say that the lawyers have initially reviewed it. They find the scope to be no issues at all. There is some tweaking of the legal language as it relates to the Federal Highway and Federal Transit Administration. So I would be asking for an approval pending final approval by the legal on both sides. So that's where we're at. I'll take any questions or comments.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if there's no hurry, I would like to, put it off for a little while. And I'd make a motion to approve the presented service plan agreement with CYMPO and NACOG pending the review from ADOT as well as our legal counsel.
I don't see a problem with that. Vinny, you have any
Unless
issues
there's
with
an
that?
urgency.
The only urgency, sorry, Chairman, and then both chairmans actually, would be that our ability to bill against it. I can bring this back to your November meeting. Then we won't be able to bill against it for October. It's not the end of the world. It's 1 month of billing, but it is still some money. So I guess
How much are we talking about, Vin?
Allison, can you help me out on that? If we have a position for the month of October, what are we looking at roughly?
I believe the estimated costs for 1 month are around $7,000.
So we would use 7,000 of our existing funds, which we have it. We wouldn't be able to bill against the current grant. So Supervisor Brown and board members, not the end of the world, but that's the only downside at this point.
Well, then let's ask the chair of the TAC what their thought is on it.
The chair of the TAC is Frank Marbury. He was not at the last TAC meeting. Vice Chair Davis ran the meeting. So Norm, if you want to unmute yourself.
I'm here and listening. So
What do you
I
think
understand the
about
question is,
waiting, Norm, or do you think we should proceed?
I'd like your direction, Supervisor Brown, is yes, let's make sure we get, there's no problems with approving it. Let's get it through ADOT and the legal.
And that's fine. From a staff standpoint, we can bring it back in November.
Well, let me go back to Norm and ask him the question again. Do you think we can wait 1 month or should we go ahead and do it? Now, the cost for waiting a month is going to be about $7,000. So the question is, we won't be able to bill against it. So if you're comfortable with it and we can move forward, let's do that. But otherwise, let's wait until legal counsel is sure what we're signing and we're all in agreement that we want to go forward with it. I mean, if there's no hurry, I don't want to go forward with it, but it saves $7,000 and it seems to be okay. Well, let's do it.
Well, keep in mind, I think the position just closed today. So they won't even have somebody on board and interview. I don't know what you're paying for in the next month.
So Norm, are you just saying that no one's we're not even going to get them on the books until the middle of October?
I guess Vinny can help answer that.
Yeah, I would expect mid-October. Your next board meeting's not till mid-November or so, or early part of November. So we would have about 3 weeks of billing. Again, Allison's best estimate's around $7,000, so probably $5,000 to $7,000. At this point, I have talked to the legal counsel. They're both not expecting any significant changes. We're expecting a response by Friday. I have a call into ADOT. So I guess the staff response is we can work with either. You know, at this point, either one's fine for us. So whatever the board's most comfortable with at this point.
So this time it's just Vice Chair Brown, do you wish to continue with your motion?
Not really.
Then we
So
can stick to the
then
original.
question- You know, the question is, do we want to basically lose out on the $7,000, you know, coming back to us while waiting to see if this is secure? Or basically is what we want to assign to or sign up for. And
Well, I'm comfortable with the way the motion reads right now. Losing $7,000 to wait 30, 40 days, I think is something that we shouldn't have to, we should consider that. We should just,
you know,
see where we're at.
I'm gonna withdraw my motion only because of the $7,000.
all right.
Otherwise, I would like to wait and have it, make sure it's reviewed properly. So.
And
But
Supervisor,
$7,000 kind of overwhelms it because we don't have a lot of money to throw away.
Exactly.
and Supervisor Brown, again, just to help, if it does help, I have checked with legal counsel and they've reviewed the core of it and there's no issues there. Their focus is making sure that it meets federal criteria, and that's fine. So because of that, I'm very confident in the direction you're now moving forward.
Do we know how ADOT feels about it?
We've had a conversation with them. They were aware of this. They wanted to be looped in for whatever decisions we made. So at this point, we're going to be circling back with them. It would be their transit division. When we verbalized what we were doing, they were in support a month ago. Since then, we've obviously cleaned up this document. So at this point, I'm not expecting any issues on the ADOT standpoint. But again, if there needed to be an amendment, we can bring that back in November.
Well, then I agree with you, Cal. Let's move forward.
Perfect. Can we get a motion?
I'll make the motion to move forward then on with the original motion.
Can I have a second? Excellent. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, moving on. Rural Transportation Advocacy Council, RTAC report. Mr. Adam, you are up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real quickly, right now, the focus is on Washington. The Speaker of the House is committed to voting on the bipartisan infrastructure package that came over from the Senate over a month ago. It passed the Senate on a 69 to 30 vote. So there were 19 Republicans, including Minority Leader McConnell, who voted for it. I think realistically, I don't know that rural America could have received a better package. It's a tremendous amount of additional funding that will be directed to highways and roads, in addition to the transit, rail, and airports. Year one, Arizona would be apportioned 169 million in additional funding over the 800 million that was apportioned this year. By year five, it would be 250 million above the current year's level. But on top of that, there will be a massive increase in competitive grant funding that's available not only to the state DOTs, but the local governments as well. So I think if this were to pass, there's a tremendous potential for additional revenue for the infrastructure. So we're less than 2 weeks away, and I'll keep everybody posted.
Anything else, sir?
That's all I have on my end.
Nice. Any questions for Kevin? Thank you, sir. We appreciate you. Move on. Item 10, review, discussion, and possible action to approve resolution 2021-01 for the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council. Mr. Gallegos, you're up.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, we put this item in conjunction with Kevin's update from RTAC. The RTAC organization has recently approved a resolution and has asked the various MPOs and COGs in Greater Arizona to do the same. So we have drafted a resolution for your review and consideration and hopefully approval today. I will say it basically mirrors the RTAC resolution. Staff only made some adjustments so that it reflects CYMPO, but it essentially supports the efforts that RTAC is doing, especially through this one-time funding effort of $50 million for Greater Arizona, of which CYMPO would get just under $4 million. So with that said, happy to take questions or comments.
Vice Chair.
Chair, I voted to approve the resolution as the RTAC representative from CYMPO, one of them. And however, to be honest with you, I really believe that we should be asking for more money. I'm thinking more towards the 75 million. The reason being is I think that they may come back on us and say, okay, you're asking for 50, we'll give you 30. And I think that may happen. And Kevin can talk to this too, but I really think we should be asking for about 75 million. And that way, if we get 50, we'll get the little over 3 million for our area. But if we got the 75, we'd end up with 5 million, which could basically take care of 2 out of the 3 projects we're talking about, I believe. I'm just talking a strategy here. Kevin?
Kevin?
Yeah, I'll try to be brief on this. So obviously, I think if that opportunity arises, we'll take that. I won't do that without direction from legislative leadership. I think in one sense, it's problematic for us in that we're basically saying this is better than earmarking pet projects of legislators because it's been through a process of vetting and prioritizing at each region's level. And so to go after an arbitrary additional amount, I mean, what are we going to increase the amount that goes to each project selected? Or do we add additional projects with the thought that it's just going to be negotiated back down? So I think that makes it very difficult for us to come up.
Let me interrupt you for a second, Kevin, on this one point, okay? One thing you said in the very beginning of what you were saying is that you talked to leadership and this is what they told you to put in there.
No.
Ask for. Is that true?
No, that is not what I said. No, what I said that if we get direction from legislative leadership, from folks who have some sway in how this legislation potentially gets inserted into the budget, if I get direction from them to pursue a greater amount, then at that point, I think that's something we need to consider.
Well, isn't that direction them telling you what they think they might be able to get?
Yes, if they tell me that we're not going after enough, then yeah, I think we go back and make the adjustment. But short of that, I think it creates problems and uncertainty. It gets away from the structure that we've created of vetting these projects. We need to be careful about that. Another thing that we need to be careful about is we need to make sure that there's a buffer so that other earmark projects can be considered. If it becomes a question where we're competing against other entities pursuing projects, I think that lessens the chances of this passing. So we've got to be careful and sort of find that sort of happy medium as far as the
earmarks we've seen come forward so far are more than what our amount of the earmarks have been more than what our share of 50 million would have been.
There was 320 million in one-time funding that was appropriated last year. If that's comparable to what's available next year, we're looking at about 1/6, which I think gives plenty of a buffer for ADOT projects, for other rural projects, as well as projects from PAG and MAG. And so again, I think we've got to find that happy medium. I think 50 million is a good starting point. And unless we get direction from legislative leadership to adjust that, that's what everybody is planned for. And it would be problematic to make that adjustment, but I think we do. if that's the direction we get from legislative leadership.
Well, like I said, I voted for this at the RTEC level, so I just want to make everybody aware that I think we should be asking for more. And if we get what we want, so to speak, then I would be fine. But I'm thinking that we're going to be asking for too little and end up with even less than what we want. So, and I'm worried about that. And earmarks are becoming, I think, more fashionable, shall we say, in the legislature. So whatever. Just I'm passing on my concerns and thoughts.
Mr. Chair, this is Board Member Knight.
Yes, sir.
I see Supervisor Brown's point. However, we started out with 40 million and then we bumped it to 50. And I'm not sure that with the since the legislature instituted the flat tax, I'm hopeful that there will be another 320 million, but at this point, we don't know. I agree with Kevin. I think we should stick with the 50 million and increase it if that's what the legislature, if they think that the money will be there and we can do that. We can increase it, but if you ask for too much, it may be it may turn them off, you know. That's just my thoughts.
Nope. Duly noted, sir. Vice Chair, you have anything else to add to that? Are we good for a motion?
Nope, I don't disagree with Gary too on this either. It's one of those middle of the road things, whether it's this side of the dollar bill or the other side. So
Now, I'll just say it's potentially very fluid, and if the opportunity arises and it makes sense, I'll certainly take that to the RTAC board. But I think as of right now, I think 50 million is still a good starting point.
Well, if that's the case, we'll entertain a motion at this time for item 10.
So moved.
We have a second.
I'll second.
Clerk, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Moving on, item 11. Review, discussion, and possible action to approve the RTAC priority projects for the CYMPO region. Mr. Gallegos, you're up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Daniel, if you could project on the screen our projects that the TAC and staff have identified. So again, these are projects that we have talked about with you previously, but as part of this effort that we're working with RTAC, we have identified three projects for the monies that we will be receiving. Again, CYMPO would be receiving just under $4 million. This is based upon population between the various MPO and COG regions. So the three projects that have been identified, and again, the TAC has reviewed and supported. Number one is listed on here of the 89A eastbound on-ramp project. Currently, CYMPO is doing a study on this particular area. And in this particular area, the study is showing for a future possible additional lane. So the monies that we're identifying here would be to partner with ADOT to implement what the plan is going to illustrate. So at this point, we've identified $2 million to be put towards the 89A on-ramps project. And again, keep in mind that that would help towards the design of the project, towards the construction of the project. And again, this would be in partnership with ADOT. If the project, as it's going down the path right now, may end up being about a $5 to $6 million project, then our contribution would be about a third of that project. But again, it depends what the study is going to end up recommending based upon local input. So that's what's listed on here as number one. Number two, based upon the priority of our regional projects, we have the Sundog Connector listed here. We are moving forward this year with the design concept report. So we already have that commitment of about $400,000 to help with with that particular report. What this money would be put towards is the actual design of the project. So again, $1.450,000, $1.4 million would be put towards the design. The estimated cost of the project is around $28 to $30 million. So the design rule of thumb is about 10%, which is why I noted $3 million here. So at this point, CYMPO could make the contribution of around half of the design for the project. Ideally, the locals, Prescott Valley, Yavapai County, would be able to come through for the remainder balance. All this to set up for a federal grant to be able to construct that road is kind of the path we're going down. And then the final project we have listed on here is the SR 69-169 intersection improvements, which would essentially create a 2-lane roundabout. ADOT has been awarded the money for the project of around $3.3 million. The concern that ADOT has expressed is the dollars for that they've been awarded may not be enough. So at this point, we have put $400,488 to support that project as they are anticipating additional funds needed. So at this time, if this one-time funding comes through, these are the recommendations of staff and the TAC to the executive board. With that said, happy to take questions or comments on it.
Anything for Vinny? If not, entertain a motion.
I make a motion.
Can I have a second, please?
Second, feel good.
Phil has a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? All right, moving on, item 12. Review, discussion, and possible action to approve posting the draft fiscal year 22 to 26 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program for public comment. Mr. Gallegos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the board, what you have in your packet is you have a new TIP. It's a transportation improvement program. This is the program that is required of the MPO for transparency of tax dollars. It also is the 5 years of funding that we'll be utilizing. And this is also a reflection of the strategic planning retreat that we just recently had. I will say the narrative of the TIP is relatively standard. So I'm not going to spend any time in that, but where I am going to spend time is actually starting with the numbers on page 21. So Daniel, if you could pull that up on the screen, that would be helpful. So what you have up here on the screen is what I want to walk you through. At the very top, you'll see the SR 69 safety and capacity improvements. These are the recent cost overruns that CYMPO has shared with Yavapai County, City of Prescott, for the widening of 69 in front of Lowe's from Prescott Lakes Parkway to Yavapai Road. So that's identified here. The next project is again out of the strategic planning retreat that this would be our year 1 priority project. We have identified $400,000 as you see here for what is the Sundog Connector Design Concept Report or DCR and environmental overview. We are, as staff, we are currently working on the RFP for that. We hope to bring that back to you at your November meeting so that we can bring a consultant on board, hopefully January and February at the latest. We're going to continue our video safety campaign, which is listed here. You see the dollars for administration. And then I want to spend just a minute or two on this payback to ADOT for SR 89 pavement preservation HERF exchange. This is a complicated item. So I'm going to try and walk you through it in 1 minute if I can. In fiscal year 19, CYMPO entered into an agreement with ADOT to work on 2 projects. One involved the city of Prescott, one involved the town of Chino Valley. The one with the city of Prescott was helping with the pavement preservation through the Dells on SR 89. And then the one in Chino Valley was with the traffic signal at Road 1 North. The reason why these two projects, even though they're in two different areas, were brought together was ADOT, with the partnership of CYMPO, was able to, in an agreement, identify dollars for both projects, that CYMPO can help with both, that ADOT can help with both. And the agreement was that CYMPO would contribute $350,000 in that fiscal year 2019 agreement. Now, the payment of that $350,000 was to be done in 2 different years, was to be done this year and 2 years ago. This year, we had planned on paying back ADOT $90,000, which meant that the $260,000 should have been previously paid. In working with ADOT Finance, those dollars were not transferred, they were not moved through the finalization of that. So long story short, we still owe $350,000. So with that said, I have worked with Allison, Yavapai County Finance, ADOT Finance. We've identified the dollars. It's taken a lot of work and effort and back and forth, and many challenges on my part, by the way. The way that we're able to do this, though, is we are going to pay back $144,000 this year, and then 2 years from now, we're going to pay the remaining balance of $206,000. Let me pause there for a minute because I know that's complicated and there might be questions. Mr. Chair, I'm happy to take questions on what I just covered so far.
You're right, Vinny. It is kind of complicated. We have any questions for Vinny in reference to this? Him and I have spoken about this offline before, and
Yeah, Cal, it's Phil Good. Benny, can you explain how the decision that was voted on to allocate those funds 2 years ago or so somehow mysteriously never were transferred to ADOT?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Councilman Gooder, member Good question. So there's so many checks and balances with the work that we do, and I will say that if there's 10 of them, 9 of the 10 of them were accomplished. So, you know, staff presented it, went through the formal process, presented it to the TAC, the executive board signed off on it. It went on to ADOT for their approval. Ultimately was signed off by Federal Highways. So everyone reviewed it, agreed to it, signed off on it. So it met all the initial steps, where I will say that when it was to have been removed out of the fiscal year 20 program, those dollars were never finally transferred out of the ledger. When it wasn't finalized, CYMPO essentially reprogrammed $260,000 into projects that we've been doing the last 2 years. So for what it's worth, sir, we did, or the previous staff and all those involved did all the initial steps, but the final step was not accomplished to the tune of, again, $260,000. So we reprogram those funds into projects like the adaptive traffic signal projects and other things that we're currently working on. So the monies are being used, but we're programmed that way. So I hope that answers your question, sir.
Well, it just sounds like it was all accounted for, and then for some reason, somebody decided, oh, we've got an extra 260,000 here, so let's go ahead and spend it on these other programs, when in fact it was earmarked for that original one. So is that in essence what happened?
That would be a fair summary.
Well, I'm glad I wasn't on the board then.
Yeah, you were.
No, not in fiscal 20.
so we certainly can't go back and change things.
Yeah, that's right. So
we can be complaining about that or whatever the case may be. Let's just hope moving forward that we don't make this same mistake and just clean it up a little bit. That's all.
that's right.
Well,
Cal.
I think, you know, Phil's got the good idea is how did we make this error? Let's make sure this error doesn't occur in the future. it's kind of a mystery to me because I don't see how we can miss, $250,000. So.
And Mr. Chair and Supervisor Brown, if I can, in order to ensure that, again, I'm surprised with all the checks and balances, but I've asked for one more check and balance. We're going to have monthly ADOT finance meetings to ensure this doesn't happen again. So that's the one thing I've asked for. I didn't think we needed additional meetings, but clearly we do. So
Vinny, that's terrific. You recognize there's a problem. You figure out a way that we're not going to let this happen again. You're going to check it monthly. That's all we can ask for.
sounds good. All right, Mr. Chair, if I can move on, then I will.
Absolutely.
All right, Daniel, can you scroll down, please? What we have listed here is, again, based upon the strategic planning retreat. Next year, we'll do an urbanized corridor master plan for $450,000. We'll be putting aside money for our next 25-year regional transportation plan. In year 3 or fiscal year 24, we'll be doing the SR 89A widening design concept report between 89 and Glassford Hill. And then if you look at fiscal years 25 and 26, we'll be doing the Great Western Design Concept Report, Environmental Overview, and Traffic Report. Again, this is the new regional road between 89A up to 5 South off of 89. And then also the SR.
Before you move on from that, are we looking at buying any right of way for Great Western Highway?
Mr. Chair and Supervisor Brown, that's not part of this. If you want that to be a discussion, happy to bring that back and we can discuss it in November. What we discussed at the strategic planning retreat, though, was doing a design concept report, environmental overview, and traffic report. And we would spend CYMPO would spend about $600,000 to conduct that. That does not include the purchasing of any right of way, but we're happy to bring that back and have a discussion in November. Continuing down the list, the final 2 things we have are HSIP projects. So they're not CYMPO projects, but they are federally funded. And it's for West Road 5 North in Paulden to add a passing lane, and then Little Ranch Road intersection improvements. Again, these are federal funds by the Highway Safety Improvement Program that ADOT is working with. Because they're federal funds of this kind, they need to be in our TIP. So
one correction on this, Vinny.
Yes, sir.
This says SR 89 Corridor Master Plan, SR 89A from Paulden to Forest Service. There is no Paulden or Forest Service 89A.
Well, it would start, sir, the southern intersection would be the intersection with 89A, and then it would go to the Forest Service boundary. We can clean up that language. I see where it's a little confusing.
Are you talking about on Mingus Mountain?
No. We're talking on SR 89.
Okay. That's why is the 89A in there?
That's where we would study it from. We would start from the intersection of 89 and 89A and go to the Forest Service boundary.
I don't think we need to cover that much, and I believe ADOT's already done that study because they're already bought the right of way and arranged for everything, and it should be from 3 North out of Chino Valley to the forest boundary.
And I would say, I guess 2 comments I would have. We are absolutely more than happy to do specifically what you just recommended.
Be about half the cost, I would think.
And as it is, it's a relatively small amount because we are going to be studying segments of it. I would say since it's 5 years out, if it's okay, either you can make the note now or we can bring it back, but we definitely have plenty of time. You'll have time, Supervisor Brown, because when we bring the scope to you to review 4 years from now, you'll absolutely be able to say, or whoever can say, look, we don't need that big segment of a road, if that's okay.
You okay with that, Tom?
Yeah, for what's being discussed so far, leaving it to a little bit more in the future to discuss it sounds good to me.
Okay.
And then I see Member Hughes has his hand raised also.
John?
Yeah, Vinny, that was raised on the last session, but I just wanted to thank you again for being able to disperse that money and then give us another year or two to get it paid back. So you did an excellent job of catching it and getting it taken care of. I just had my hand up for a while.
Oh,
Thank
sorry
you.
about that.
That's
Thank you.
okay.
I appreciate it. All right, Daniel, if you can continue scrolling. The next couple of pages, I'm not going to go through for the reason that these are local. These are projects by Yavapai County, City of Prescott, that they wanted to identify as major projects that they're doing through the city process. In the past, the TAC has felt that this is a good illustration of significant projects throughout the region. So where I do want to pick it up, Daniel, is on, you're scrolling here. I think it's the transit part. Isn't that the next part? There you go. Thank you. So in our tip, we also have our transit planning funds identified. This was to Supervisor Brown's question at the very beginning. Again, for this transit planner position, again, we have the funds identified through this particular part of it through 5305D. The MPO receives around $70,000 a year just for transit planning activities. And then we also pursue additional grant funds through the 5310 program. If you continue to scroll, Daniel, again, I'm not going to spend much time on the rest of it, other than to say any federal funds that come into the area for Yavapai Regional Transit, New Horizons, People Who Care, is identified in here, must be identified in here. This is the one document that is the host document for those particular projects. And then finally in the tip is what you just approved through RTEC. So with that said, happy to take questions or comments.
Anything additional for Vinny? If not, we'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Can we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Uh-oh. Hey, can you hear me? I'm sorry, it came off for a minute. So.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, moving on. Item 13, I believe we're on. Review, discussion, and possible action to approve amending the FY 22-23 Unified Planning Work Program. Mr. Gallegos.
Thank you. We have a couple amendments to our existing work program. Daniel, if you would go to page 6. We have, since I've been here, I've been able to do working with Yavapai County Human Resources and the County Board of Supervisors have done a reorganization of CYMPO. I've updated my title. It's no difference in pay, no difference in job description. It just relates to the other MPO and COGS throughout Arizona. It was previously administrator, which was a little more archaic to when the position was first established. We've talked about the transit planner position, and we have reclassified Allison McCarthy to an administrative assistant 2 position. The next page shows the organization chart. And then page 11, please, Daniel. This is again the funds that we talked about for the transit planning efforts that we talked about. It's highlighted in yellow. I'm going to pause here. I'm going to turn it over to Allison. Allison, if you could briefly take the board through what's highlighted in yellow for the remaining part. And if they have any questions, we can take them. Thanks, Allison.
Sure. So on page 12, the 2 top budget tables, you'll see the highlighted yellow portions. That's the added 5310 mobility management funding that we've included for fiscal years 22 and 23 per the new arrangement with NACOG. At the bottom of that page, the highlighted portion there reflects updated carry forward numbers from fiscal year 21, now that the fiscal year has closed. Moving onward, you'll see highlights in just about every budget table, and that is due to the changes that we have made to the TIP. So since we're adopting a new TIP, it's affected the funding that we've allocated for each of these tasks. So it's just matching what we have in the TIP. And then under section 200, regional planning projects, page 21, we've just updated the language to include the projects that are included in the TIP as well as funding coming through RTAC for Greater Arizona. On page 23, we're proposing that we delete section 202. This section was originally created kind of as a placeholder for the carry forward funding that we knew would be programmed for planning projects. We just hadn't identified them yet. Now that they're identified, this work element is no longer needed. On page 24, coordinated mobility management. This language is just updating, or it's reflecting the new arrangement with NACOG, CYMPO regaining the mobility management responsibilities and funding. And then lastly, pages 29 and 30. These are the budget tables that summarize all of our funding sources and projects. And so there's a lot of changes there, again, just to align with what is reflected in the tip. And that's all I have for the work program, if anyone has any questions.
Anything else? We all good on this, Vinny?
Yes, sir, we are.
Yes.
All right, we'll need a motion to approve amending the FY 22-23 Unified Planning Work Program.
I make a motion.
Thanks, John.
Second.
Was that you, Gary?
Yes, second.
Second with Gary. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Moving on to item 14, ADOT Northwest District Report. Todd, you're out there? Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, board. Brief update here for the Prescott Lakes widening project on SR 69. We just completed the stage 4, which is the 90% review of the plans. We're working on the right-of-way and utility clearances, and we're anticipating to tentatively advertise the project in March of 2023. The paving for the legislative funding from Crewwood to Stone Ridge Drive. Our project manager for that project is working on getting a consultant on board and setting the project up. The SR 169 roundabout, like Vinny earlier stated, we have the project programmed into our 5-year program, and the project manager is working on getting a solicitation out in October to bring a design consultant on board. And then out in the Chino Valley area on Road 1 North, the paving and the pole foundations and all the work has basically been done for the project, but we are waiting on the traffic signal poles and equipment and signal cabinet to be delivered to complete the project. That completes the update. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Awesome job, Todd. Anything else for Todd? No. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just make a quick announcement, please.
Absolutely.
The members of the board currently in your chat right now, you're receiving a link for the executive session in a few minutes. Don't click on it yet, please, because you'll leave us. But in just a moment, when the chair calls for the vote for executive session, to make it easier, in your chat box, you have a link that'll take you into executive session. So you should be having it now. Don't click on it until it's time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Awesome. Moving on, item 15, State Transportation Board Report. Mr. Knight.
Yes, thank you. As you probably know, the State Transportation Board meeting will be this Friday. It will be virtual, even for the board members. And in that agenda, they've added two agenda items were added in a revised copy. It's available on the Transportation Board's website. Item 6I and 6J. You'll find in there 4.7 million from the these are these are funds that were appropriated by the legislature and are now being put into the 5-year plan as new projects. They're going into the FY21. And the first one for Yavapai County is 4.7 million from the legislature for repaving SR 69 in Prescott Valley. There's a second one, 4 million from the legislature for SR 89 from milepost 317 to milepost 322 for a 1-inch thin bond overlay. So those two items are monies that came from the legislature and now are being will be up for approval by the board to go into the 5-year plan, and they'll go in the FY21.
Gary, what were those mile markers again on 89?
On 89, the mile markers were 317 to 322, so 5 miles.
Thank you.
Anything else, Gary?
That's all. That's all I've got at this time. As I mentioned, the board meeting will be Friday. It will be virtual, and everything should be available on the Transportation Board's website for joining that meeting and as audience
Awesome.
or attendee.
Sounds good. Moving on, item 16, future items for agenda. Of course, if we have anything to discuss between now and our next meeting, be sure to get with Allison or Vinny and make sure we can get it on the agenda to discuss. Pretty simple. At this time, though, I'll need a motion for item 17 to adjourn into executive session for a performance review of Mr. Gallegos.
Don't move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 So at this time, and making sure we're good, Vinny, we're clicking on the chat box and then the link.
Yes, and again, board members, remember you need to return back to this meeting after executive board for the
Yes, sir.
final action, but you should have a link to executive session. We'll see you there shortly.
Okay, I see it already. Thank you.
Marlene?
Everybody made it?
Yeah.
Perfect.
So I think they might be on their way back, actually.
Very quick.
Yeah.
Are we missing? We're missing a couple?
You're missing Tom Armstrong, but you do have a quorum at this time, sir. I think Tom Armstrong is the only one you're missing.
I'll give him a minute. Allison, you want to try to give him a call?
Who do they call?
Sure, we'll do.
Thank you, ma'am.
Who did we lose?
Councilmember Armstrong.
Al. We lost somebody.
Armstrong.
Oh, Tom Armstrong.
Are you muted?
No, I'm not.
Just spoke with Tom and his Zoom account is updating, so it might be a minute or two before he can join us.
That doesn't sound good. We'll give it a couple minutes, and then worst case scenario, we get him on the phone, or maybe Allison can keep him on the phone to hear a speaker.
Yeah, Allison, is that possible for you just to have him connect on the phone?
Sure, I'll give him a call. Okay, I have Tom on my speakerphone right now.
Okay, great. Everyone's good then? Everyone can hear? So this time we're back in executive session, or not, I'm sorry, we're out of executive session, back in general session. And at this time, due to, it's just a personnel matter, so we don't get into the details of what we discussed in executive. I'm going to make a motion at this time to accept the employee performance evaluation as we discussed in its entirety.
I second that.
A second, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
It passes. With that being said, any other questions or anything for the good of the order? If not, we will adjourn for the evening, gentlemen.
Thank you all. Have a good night.